welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we are here with Leighann Hart. So Leighann, tell us, how do you deal when shit gets real, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I like to watch movies over and over again. I'm a comfort watcher, so I don't watch too many new movies. I like to rewatch the same things just over and over, but usually it's TV shows like HBO Girls. Very obsessed with that. I've probably seen the whole series like 10 times through.
I haven't watched that one. I'm going to have to watch that.
It's really good. A lot of people hate it. It got some flack like in the media, but what doesn't nowadays?
That's true. Everything does.
Yeah. No, I watched it. I thought it was like crazy, but good, if that makes any sense. I was like, some of the things I was like, you're insane. This is insane. What's going on? But I'm here for every moment. That's basically what happened the whole time.
It's a little off the wall for sure, but it's good. Yeah.
I don't mind off the wall because that's how, like we were just talking about before we jumped on here, Nip Tuck was always really off the wall, and I love that show. So
yeah, anything that's just different, like not the normal kind of thing, I guess.
I totally get watching stuff over and over again. I'm like that too, but I guess they say relates to anxiety. Like if you have anxiety, like not wanting to be surprised, you watch the same thing over and over again. So
you know what to expect. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just don't make the movies like the classics, you know?
That's true.
Like now everything is, and we were literally just talking about this before we jumped on again, but like everything's too like, oh, it's not this enough, it's not that enough, and criticized. Right. And if you go back to like the 80s movies and the 90s and early 2000s, they did some wild shit. And we were all like, yeah, this is great. Gonna love this forever.
That's like I've talked about before. Sex and the City is one of my shows that I watch over and over again. And I've thought about if that was, instead of being in like the early 90s, if it was now, people would probably be freaking out about it.
They'd be shitting their pants. Because everything has to be along the right line. Yeah, a certain way. You have to play the line just so.
So Leighann is a wonderful writer, and just like myself, she started writing when she was really young. So what was 12-year-old Leighann writing about?
Things that no one should hear about because they were trashy and horrendous, as you can imagine, coming from
really
brain. Oh yeah, very trashy. not in that way, but trashy.
I was assuming it was cringy. In that way.
No.
I was like, holy shit. That's a different 12-year-old right in there.
I actually remember the very first piece of fiction that I wrote outside of school, and it was in this blue like composition notebook, and it was band fiction. Do you know what that is?
Oh yes, I do.
And it was about Fall Out Boy, and it was
I love it.
So awful. It was the worst. Yes. And I probably wrote like 30 pages, and then I just gave up because how can you sustain something writing that's about the length of a novel at 12 years? You can't. I mean, maybe some people can, and that's cool, but I could not.
No, the same. I wrote a book too when I was like 14, and like my version of a book at 14 was probably about the same, like 30 pages. That's about as long as you can get.
And you feel so accomplished with those 30 pages at that point.
Yeah, like, and how far are you really going to get with a Fall Out Boy fan fiction at the age of 12?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much you can write, in my opinion, at the age of 12 about a band.
That's true. Like, what do you even know? Like, about touring or about, like, fame or, like...
Yeah, well, what's her name? She wrote that that after book. That Hardin Scott character was actually, I guess, molded off of her love of like One Direction, which
Anna Todd.
Yeah, Anna Todd. There you go. Yeah. So I guess it's not quite the same because she wasn't writing about the band, but she was inspired by the band.
I think she was though at first, right? When it was on Wattpad, or no?
I've been reading it on. Inspired. I think it's just inspired because I've read the first book on Wattpad, and it's like I think she just got his looks
right
One
Yeah.
Direction. But it was like, hey, it was successful for her. Maybe I need to start writing on Wattpad.
That's true, right? There were so many of those books too. They're so popular.
They are. But one day, Leighann, we will be there. And speaking of that, what are you writing about now?
Ooh, well, it's a trilogy, and I hope to start releasing it in January, but it's all very like tenuous right now because I'm juggling kind of all 3 books at the same time, which feels kind of crazy.
A lot.
Yeah.
It is dark romance, but not really. I had a whole like crisis recently with the genre, and I posted a rant about it kind of on social media because I wasn't sure if it was the right label for that series, and I don't want to mislead readers. I don't want them to expect, you know, that they're getting a certain thing when in reality it may be different from their expectations and have them be disappointed. So I
Yeah.
chatted with some friends, and now I've been jokingly referring to it as dark-ish romance.
It's darkish.
Yeah,
It's dark enough.
right.
So is this your first series?
No, it's not. It's gonna
Yeah.
be my second series.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to double check.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Which
everything
I don't
that
know
we
if you would call my
researched.
first series a series or not, because it's only 2 books, so it's not really like a series.
It's
Yeah,
a
well,
duet. I think usually it's called a duet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Fine.
right.
It's close.
I think for romance, like people say duet, but then in a lot of other genres, people say like duology or whatever. That sounds kind of weird. So
It sounds very fancy. And obviously I write romance, so that's what I wrote a duet, so that's what I call it. It just sounds simpler. Like it's very everybody knows what a duet is. Like
right.
it makes sense. Like duology, you're like, what?
You're like,
Wait a
this
minute.
sounds like some scientific like
So
Yes.
you mean geology?
right. Like, is this a school subject or
Was I supposed to learn this? I don't remember learning it.
and duet just sounds like sexy too, like it fits romance. So
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
I mean,
It does.
So does your relationship influence your stories? Do you take some stuff from real life? Is your real life spicy?
No, it's not spicy. I'm a mom and I'm tired and no, I'm kidding. No. Yes and no. I mean, some things like that I've written are loosely inspired by things from my life, but I don't write to the point where things become autobiographical because my aim isn't to tell my story. Like I'm telling somebody else's story, like the story of my characters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, I mean, we write what we know at least a little bit about, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. I try to just reflect on specific experiences I've had and like pull from that emotion, whether it's like pain or joy, and I like infuse that in my stories. So
Yeah, because you want to give it that like lifelike feeling, you know? Because
yeah,
without that and without knowing exactly,
yeah,
it's not as good, right?
right. I
don't
think
know.
fiction has to be like relatable and it has to have some layer of authenticity if you want to connect with your readers.
Exactly.
Because that's the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
goal. Yeah. And if they can take something away from that, then that's a cool bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you for sure. And you know, your life is the easiest thing to pull from because I mean, who has more experience in life in your life than you? Yeah.
Right. If you want to write about something, you know, that you aren't familiar with, you know, we're lucky to live in the age of technology. We have the internet and we have, you know, nonfiction books we can pull from. So, you know, it's not
yeah.
hard.
It is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is important. I'm glad that you brought that up because it is important. I just read a book and I don't like not trying to shame anybody, but
I use that line so often.
because you don't want to, it's not like you're trying to be mean.
Exactly.
But she didn't capitalize Marines, which
I knew she was going to bring this up.
I was like, all you have to do is Google search. Like, even if your editor, first of all, your editor should catch that, number one. And second of all, that's an ego. Like, you type in Google, do you capitalize Marines when you're writing? Guess what? It'll come up right at the very top of the search engine. And then she was like sending him, you'll know as a military, coming from a military family, she sent him straight from boot camp to Afghanistan. And I'm like, that doesn't
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't work like that. I'm like, I can't read this.
These are easy things to research.
Those
Right.
are very easy things
That's
to
bad.
research.
That's
Super
so
easy
bad.
things to research. Like all you have to do, like I said, Google search. Like it'll literally come up right at the top. Like,
Yeah.
come on, people.
Well, and it's also not like it's something that like Harry Potter, where you're just creating a world that is fantasy. So it'll be whatever the hell I say it is, you know?
True.
It's pretty realistic and in real life. And there's the Marines, and it's a thing, and people know about this thing. So you probably should do a little research. Just throwing that out there.
No kidding. That's bad.
Which I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons you write age gap. Like it's something you're familiar with, like you don't have to research or you know about it. And then when you need to add things in there, you look it up.
It's comfortable for sure.
Well, it has to be a little bit comfortable, right? For writing, or else you won't be comfortable putting it out there.
Yeah, you have to be invested in what you write, because if you aren't passionate about it, why are you spending X amount of hours every day? And I think people don't realize how exhausting and how taxing it is to write a book. Like you spend so many hours alone, away from your family, just locked in a room by yourself, trying to create this world. And yeah, it can be really isolating too, but
absolutely can be.
Love it. So
we'll tell our readers more about your duology, whatever we decided to call it, so they can look it up and read it and decide if that's something they're interested in.
It's called the Rosenfeld duet. So it's Loving Rosenfeld and Having Rosenfeld. Those are the two books. And it follows a journalist, Peter Rosenfeld, the titular character, and the 18-year-old heroine. Her name is Riley. And she's a new barista at the coffee shop he frequents. He works across the street. That's where his newspaper office is. And he sees her one day in the shop, and he's like pretty struck by her. But he is somebody who's very like reclusive and quiet and anxious. He doesn't really like to talk to people, and when he does, he's very snarky and grumpy. And she's just like kind of this ball of sunshine that comes into his life, and he doesn't know if he wants to accept it or not. But she's very persistent, and she's like into him right away because she's young and everything. It's just like fantastical to her. I don't know if that was a good explanation or not, but that's
no, it was
the gist of how things get started, I guess.
And no wonder you and Wesley are friends. You and your barista connections.
Right.
Yeah, and you guys are hooking up those baristas out there in the world. I love it.
I know. Like baristas need love too. They can't only subsist on coffee.
Really? I just wanted coffee. That's all I ever wanted.
You're a better person than me, Constance.
I'm just kidding. I just, like, as you see the coffee cup in my background, I don't love coffee at all. Just joking. So, are those books like based off of your like age gap relationship?
Everyone asks me that. No, our gap is not crazy like that. Like, I think it's like a 17 or 18 year gap in the books, which is kind of a lot. Mine is 11 years, so it's not huge. But when I was younger, like it was a bigger difference, and it looked kind of bad as compared to now. Like I'm an adult, so people don't, really care
question it. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, parents, when they started dating, they're 5 or 6 years apart. Oh my gosh, I should know this. They're my parents. I think my mom was 16 and my dad was 21 when they got together. But this was like the 90s, so people were not as judgmental back then.
Yeah, yes. For sure. Has there been any struggle with you guys being 11 years apart? Like, is there a struggle, or is it just it's not even thought about?
A lot, yeah, when we first got together. But now things are so settled, and like We both get along with each other's families. And that was not always the case when we first got together. But yeah, things are really chill now, and everybody just gets along, and we have a daughter together, so she definitely like helps to bring
everyone together.
Love it.
Okay, but I want the tea. What happened? What were the issues early on? Give me all the details. I'm a cat.
I don't want to like throw shade. I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I would say the biggest naysayer was his sister, but they were like very close their whole lives. And she was, even though she's younger than him, she was very, very protective of him because he'd had like a bad relationship before. And she, I think, just wasn't sure of my intentions.
You don't see that normally on the guy's side of the family. That's kind of refreshing.
It is.
Because normally it's like the older like brothers of the girl.
That's like a cliche almost, right?
Yes,
like,
yeah. And I have to say, my brothers never very concerned. They were never concerned about anybody I dated. They were like, that's nice.
So the sister was the one that wasn't very like okay with you.
Yeah, even like for years. I mean, it wasn't just like an initial thing. Like if he was visiting me, I was living, you know, off somewhere with my parents. We were in Hawaii, and
oh, awesome.
Yeah. We got engaged, and we were calling all of his family to like tell them the news because obviously they weren't over there. And when I got to his sister's call, I was so nervous, and she was very just like defensive and like not good, and she hung up, and I cried. I cried so hard.
No. How did you guys repair that relationship? Yeah.
After I graduated high school, I moved back to Georgia for college because that's where my husband is from. And just spending time together, like on Saturdays, we'd go to his parents' house and she would come to town. She lives about 2 hours away, but sometimes she'd come down and visit. So just hanging out, watching football games. But even for a few years into our marriage, like those football games were awkward and there was a lot of silence and just like forced like cordiality. But
hello. How are you?
Yeah. But eventually we just came to this place where we're, you know, now we are so friendly with each other, so comfortable around each other. And I'm so like thankful to have reached that place with her because, you know, like
you don't want it to be awkward for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Right.
She is my husband's only like sibling. So, and they're so close. So I feel like, yeah, I have to get along with her. Like we have to have a solid relationship.
Yeah, for sure. How did your family take it? The like age gap?
Well, my mom wasn't happy with me because it was on her shoulders to tell my dad. He was deployed in Afghanistan at the time. And he hung up. I think my mom said he hung up the Skype call, which is expected. It was like a crazy situation. He was already over there. Like I can't even imagine like what he was going through and what he was seeing every day. Like,
and then he can't even.
And then to dump that on him.
Yeah. And it's not like he would be able to be there to meet the guy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, he came home like, I think, God, when like 2 months after that is when he came home.
Well, that's
and
good.
We met then, but it was just like, whoa. And that meeting was crazy also because I anticipated it to go, you know, horribly wrong because my parents hated the guy that I dated before my husband. So I was like, well, how is this going to go? But I think it worked in my favor because that relationship was so awful and that guy treated me like crap. And they met my husband, and I think they just forgot about the age gap for a minute, and they saw like how we behaved together, well he treated me. And I think even from the first meeting, my dad could like glean that from him, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot.
I feel like military guys are really good about picking up on stuff like that. Like I know my husband is really good about like being able to pinpoint like I don't know about that person. that
like
person's all
reading
right.
people and just
Yeah.
being like intuitive and
Yes.
whatever. Yeah.
Which makes sense because they have to for their job. So it makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So what was life growing up like in a military family?
There's always the good and the bad. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to live so many places. I was born here in Georgia, and uh, from that point, we moved to Alaska, and then we moved to Maryland, then to Germany, back to
Ooh.
Georgia, then to Hawaii, and I graduated high school there, and then I moved back here to Georgia, and I've been here ever since. So,
How is Germany?
Germany was pretty awesome. We lived on Patrick Henry Village. It's like not around anymore. I think my dad said it's actually like a refugee camp now.
Wow.
But the housing base, like as it was, it's like no longer used by
Yeah.
military. So
Were you able to like go to a bunch of different countries while in Germany? Because I know that like once
Yeah.
you get to Europe, it's easy to go to a bunch of other places.
Right. Like sometimes we would take like little weekend things. Like I think it was an hour to drive to this city in France, and we would go there sometimes, Strasbourg, and we would just like
Oh,
roam
nice.
the city and stuff. So that was pretty cool. And
So
then
cool.
yeah, we take weekend trips to places, and we went on a cruise one time, did all kinds of stuff. So I was like really fortunate in that way to be able to travel and
Yeah.
see so much and have so many experiences.
Were you
For
here on
sure.
Oahu when you were in Hawaii?
Yeah.
What high school
We
did you go
lived
to?
on Mauna Loa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we lived on AMR, and my dad was at Fort Shafter, and then I think after a while he went to Schofield
Okay.
after
They're,
a promotion maybe or something.
they're both still here.
Yeah.
So what would you give like any tips to like military families and military children? I know that Rietta wanted to know for her little guy.
Right. So I would say to not have expectations. And I don't say that to be negative, but I think if you go into a situation like that, if you go into a move, like I think sometimes you can shoot yourself in the foot being too optimistic, but also at the same time, if you're too pessimistic, I think it's better to go in without any expectations, because then you don't create room for disappointment, and just kind of take everything in stride and just take it how it comes, and don't put pressure on yourself. But also also don't be an asshole to your parents.
That's a good one.
A move, is so much on a kid, but it's so much more on the parents. It's a lot of stress and adjustments. So I think, patience is a great thing to have, but at the same time, I don't know if that's a practical thing to expect a kid to have.
That's very true. But honestly, all of that I have to say is kind of good advice for life. Like even if you're not in the military, listen to your advice. I would say that's pretty good.
It applies to
a lot
situations. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Nope, I definitely agree too, because like you said, I mean, things change so often in the military that like if your expectations are high and then it could change completely, then you're just going to be absolutely disappointed.
Crushed. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially as a kid, like adults can, navigate it a little bit better, like emotionally wise, than like a child is capable of.
Yeah.
But that's just my humble opinion.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for kids, military kids, is socialization,
Yeah.
Because some kids are very sociable, and they're, they'll thrive no matter what environment you put them in, kids who are talkative and whatever. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there are those kids who are quiet and more reserved, and it's harder for them to like break into those new situations, and it can be hard for them to form meaningful emotional attachments when they know they're going to have to relocate every few years. It can be hard for them to like open themselves up and make friends or whatever the case
Yeah.
may be. So
kind of speaking of, only like kind of, how did you meet your husband? I've like forgot to ask, like how, and then like what age were you guys?
that I don't know if I want to talk about that.
Oh, you don't have to if you don't want to, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I was very young when we met, and we met under kind of weird circumstances. Like usually I just make up a BS story of how we met because I don't want people to judge him. So
Understandable. He's your husband, and you don't want people to think any less of him.
We don't judge.
He was in grad school when we met. I'll say that.
Nice.
But the way we re-met, he was working as a journalist, and I ran into him at a basketball game, and that is true.
Oh.
That's not BS.
So I see where, you know, the Rosenfeld thing kind of, you got a little bit of inspiration from him, huh?
Yeah, I think that people, you know, they hear like, oh, it's loosely based on my relationship, and then they assume that Rosenfeld is my husband. But what I haven't told people is that like I put a lot of myself in Rosenfeld, like my emotional like journey and his depression and his anxiety and everything that he goes through. Like that's all me. So
Rosenfeld and the main girl characters, actually you guys flipped in real life.
Kind of, right? Because I'm super grumpy and he's a huge optimist. So we have a funny dynamic.
That's great. You you normally do hear like the story that you write where the girl is bubbly and outgoing and the guy is more reserved. So it's kind of cool to be like, no, in real life, I'm totally grumpy and he's totally the optimist. And I love that.
Yeah, he's so positive. Sometimes I have to make fun of him. I'm like, you can't like be this optimistic about like X, Y, whatever the situation may be, you know?
Yeah. See, and that's why you write dark romance. You get all the grumpiness out on paper, but in a fun way.
Exactly.
In a sexy way.
Right.
I don't know
what that
dark
and sexy way.
In a dark and sexy.
Oh yeah. So do you plan to branch out into any other genres, or right now you still sticking it with the dark romance
or dark-ish, we should say.
Dark-ish romance,
right.
Yeah.
Well, my first series wasn't dark, you know, it was like contemporary romance. So I don't know if that's why I wanted to do something different or whatever.
So technically you've already branched out into dark-ish.
Yeah.
You're one step closer.
It's funny because the trilogy, the one that I said is dark-ish romance, the original conception or whatever for the series was a romantic comedy. And then
oh my god, that's very different.
Yeah, very different.
But then one what if like led to this spiral of things that made it a dark romance. So
and you just liked that better?
Yeah, I don't know. Because it was so different and it was unexpected, and I was like, I would have never thought that I would write something like this, so I had to go for it. Yeah.
All right.
But to answer your question, if I would write any other genres other than romance, the short answer is no, because like I need romance. I think every story needs romance, no matter what the overall genre is.
I concur.
I don't know. It's like caffeine, you know? It's like a stimulant. Like I need it to get through a story.
Yes.
So
yeah. I realized actually in high school. Okay, so sorry that I'm interrupting and telling a random story about my life. So when I was younger, absolutely 100% hated reading so much. Then my friend gave me a romance suspense novel and she's like, please, come on, read it. You're going to love it. And I read it and I was like, I read it in a day and I was like interested and I like loved it. And I was like, so basically what you're telling me and what I have now learned is that I need a little bit of romance in whatever I'm going to be reading. This is
Right.
what I have learned. And if there is not even a little bit of romance, not interested.
Right.
Well, even if you think about all the great books out there, especially ones that have been popular recently, like for instance, where the Crawdads Sing, like even that book had murder and all the other things, but it still at the core had a romance story.
Right.
Mhm. I love it.
Yeah, anything that will get people to read, right? Whatever it may be. So,
I didn't even know I liked reading until I read romance. So here we are. And then my mom was like, "Who are you? Why are you reading so much? This is weird." Because I never read. Reading was like pulling teeth. And then I started reading smut, as my teachers called it.
you got that smut in there and your dirty mind was set free.
Yeah. Mhm. And that's fine.
So since we're talking about books more, then what is one of the favorite books that you have read, Leighann?
oh my gosh, I hate to be so like predictable, but my favorite book of all time is Lolita. And I know a lot of people have a problem with that book, but I think people who say they have a problem with it haven't read it. They just hear what it's about and they dismiss it without having read it. Yeah, the main character, he's he's charming and he's cunning and he's intellectual, but he's also manipulative and a horrible human being, but also he's human. So
Right.
It's a really entertaining story, as messed up and horrific as it is. It's really well written and really well constructed because, it's unreliable narrator. So you really kind of feel with and connect with the main character, even though he's
A dick.
so awful.
I actually haven't read that one, so I just wrote it down.
Yeah, well, I hope you enjoy it. I feel like it's one too that you might have to read it a few times, and every time you read it too, you find something that you missed before.
Oh, I like those the best.
Yeah, I do too. I felt that way about Olive Kittredge. Like I felt that way about that book because she's kind of an abrasive main character, and you like go back and forth between like loving and hating her. You're like,
I love
oh,
that. Yeah.
So like every time I read it, I'm like, okay, this time I like her.
That's when you know the character is just so well done when they can,
when you can love and hate them at the same time.
Right, exactly.
That's impressive.
It is.
Yeah.
So if you could be any fictional character, what character would you be?
Severus Snape, because
I love it.
We are both snarky Capricorns who never shower. And also,
oh my god, I love it.
Curious about the dungeon he lives in. Like, I would love to live in a dungeon and boss kids around all day. So,
and smack them over the head with books, because that sounds like great.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
You also have the same skin tone, so just putting that out there.
And like the same hair.
I don't mean to be a dick.
No, it's the truth.
She's like, damn it, don't I know it?
Yeah, Snape is my favorite character.
No, I love it. I need to reread all the Harry Potters again. It's been so long.
I know. I'm waiting for my daughter to get old enough so I can start reading them to her.
Actually, they have a children's set of them.
The illustrated ones, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Apparently, my sister-in-law buys them for like all of the baby showers she's ever gone to. She's like bought them the illustrated set.
They're expensive, but I mean, they're really cool. Like, it's a cool thing to have.
That seems to be the new thing to do too. Like they're doing that with a lot of things. They're turning it into like graphic novels or illustrated novels or whatever, which is cool. I mean, it's reaching more people and more money for them. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she only bought one book. I don't know, but she said that she bought them for like a couple of people for their children. And I'm like, that's awesome. I need that set whenever I have a kid.
I think they've only done 4 of them so far. I don't know if they've done all of them. But
I have no clue.
I've lost track of that stuff.
I know, I have too, because that was one of the Like you were talking about, Connie, like some of the first stuff you read. I think that was one of the first books my dad bought me was Harry Potter.
Harry
And that was
Potter.
when I first was like,
Same.
That was
reading is kind of cool.
Yeah.
that was actually like a series that my mom and my brother bonded over. I did not. I was still, when they were coming out, I was still in that I fucking hate reading. And like
Yeah.
I think I read like the first two, and then I was like, I still fucking hate it. Like, and it like, to me it felt more like a chore because my mom gave them to me because she wanted her and I to be able to talk about them.
Yeah.
And it was just like me, I was like, I fucking hate this feels like a chore, you know.
Yeah.
But
You're
it was
also
actually
you're also so much younger, you know, you're 7 years younger than me, so there was that gap
yes.
between.
And so it ended up actually being my mom and my older brother super bonded over them and would talk about the books and whatnot.
You gotta
I
love when
still
that
don't
can
think
happen.
my mom still hasn't even finished watching the movies. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
I've
gosh.
seen all of the movies. What the heck?
The movies are never as good though. The movies are never like they cannot do justice of what your brain and the book together can come up with.
But see, I am
Yeah.
very different than you, Rieta, for sure, because you talked some smack about whatever books going into movies before we got on here. And see, I like to keep them as completely total separate entities. Like it's slightly based off the book, but I will not compare because you know that the book will be better. It
Yeah,
always
the
will be
book is
better
always
because
better.
you can always have more detail. There's
Exactly.
10 times much more detail in a
I just
book
hate when they don't
than a
even
movie.
stick to it at all. Like
Ratchet
Ready
is what you were
Ready
saying
Player
earlier.
One. No, Ready Player One.
I loved Ready Player One.
It's not like the book at all. Not even the only thing that's related to the book is the three portals. Like the three portals themselves aren't even the same. So you're like, wait a minute.
That's fine. I still love the movie.
The
was
movie is
great.
really good. If you do look at it as a separate entity, it is really good, but it is not.
I
It does
tried
not
to.
follow the book at all. I don't know if
I
you've read
mean-
it, Leighann.
I haven't. I've heard of it, but yeah.
They're actually really good books, and there's still romance in them.
Oh. It's about trivia, right? Or something.
It's about a video game, essentially.
Right.
Like a virtual reality that's really kind of taken over like everybody.
And then it has like a lot of like
participates
the 80s movies.
That's
and
what I
stuff
heard
like
about
that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does because
All the classic.
the guy that created it was obsessed with pulp culture and a lot of it in the 80s, The Breakfast Club, all that kind of stuff was like his jam.
One of my husband's friends is like obsessed with that series and he's been trying to sell us on it, but
And
Yeah,
Ready
that's
Player
good.
One or Breakfast Club?
Ready Player One, the books. Yeah.
Yeah. The second
Sorry,
book
I was
isn't as good as the first one, but the first book's really good.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate when the first
Yeah.
book is phenomenal, and then the rest of them you're like, but why? Why, Joe? You killed it. You have
Yeah.
murdered the rest. Thank you.
Well, Leighann, where can our listeners get in touch with you if they need to, and where can they find your books?
I'm on Instagram at Leighann Hart, and between those two words there are 2 underscores, kind of complicated. Same name on Twitter, and then my books are available literally wherever books are sold. So
And before we go, can you give us like a little teaser about what the new series is about? Because we
okay.
never asked.
Yeah.
We didn't ask before when you were talking about them, so
Right.
we'll end there. It's great.
Actually, let me grab my second book because I put a little teaser about it in the back of the book.
Perfect.
Oh, snap.
So I have this like, well prepared thing and I don't sound like a bumbling idiot. Okay. A university psychiatrist with a shady past and a headstrong undergrad come together for a semester-long mentorship. But complications quickly arise when the student uncovers dark rumors about her mentor.
Ooh.
Sounds awesome. I'm ready.
That's like a power imbalance relationship because
I
he's
like it.
responsible for like 90% of her grade. It's a shady situation from the get.
I like it.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
but like the professor student thing is a very hot motive or motif or whatever you want to call it in romance. So
yeah, he's not a professor, he's like a psychiatrist, but yeah, but he works at the school, so it's kind of like
so it's
the
kind
same kind of thing, but yeah, a little different.
of, I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, this is how to do when shit gets real, everybody. Don't forget to check us out every Friday, and don't forget to rate and review us. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Leighann, for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see y'all next episode.